Good morning, and thank you for tuning in to the Global Current. I am Zanele Njapa.
And I'm Tila Wittig.
Today in news, a coalition of armed forces begins their fight to liberate the Iraqi city of Mosul from the control of the so-called Islamic State.
The death of Thailand's longest-reigning monarch, King Bhumibol.
2 American soldiers were killed by an Afghan soldier.
A teenage girl dies in India after fasting for more than 2 months.
The Democratic Republic of Congo is plagued with humanitarian crisis.
Then Daniel Kim digs deeper into the conflicts that persist in the DRC in an interview with Dr. Assefaw Bariagaber.
And now, Gillian Lope brings us a report on the Western-backed coalition which is fighting to remove ISIS from Iraq's second-largest city, Mosul.
According to CNN, Iraqi forces have commenced retaking Mosul with the aim of evicting ISIS. When ISIS took control of Mosul, a city of 2.5 million citizens, in 2014, they subjected its people to executions and the institution of Sharia law. Mosul's proximity to Turkey and Syria means that Iraqi forces can limit the movement of weapons and fighters flowing towards ISIS. Additionally, oil fields near Mosul have funded ISIS operations. The terrorist group targeted minority groups such as Assyrians, Armenians, Turkmen, and Kurds whom have lived in the region for centuries. Restoring Mosul to Iraqi forces would allow these displaced persons to return to their homes. NBC News mentions that American Ground Force Commander in Iraq, Major General Gary Volesky, said that the U.S.-backed Iraqi forces have the momentum on their side to drive ISIS out of Mosul. Major General Volesky estimates that between 3,000 and 5,000 ISIS militants occupy Mosul. However, some of these fighters have withdrawn. The BBC states that the European Union is preparing for the return of jihadists leaving Mosul for Europe. In response to this, British diplomat and Security Commissioner Sir Julian King claimed that even a small number of militants would pose a serious threat that we must prepare ourselves for. However, Sir King stressed that it is unlikely that there would be a mass exodus of ISIS militants toward Europe. The International Committee of the Red Cross has appealed to all sides and are bracing themselves for the largest man-made humanitarian crisis of recent times. Additionally, the United Nations is working outside of Mosul to create new refugee sites in case as many as 1 million people need to flee their homes. In an address recorded by Reuters, Iraqi Prime Minister Haidar al-Abadi informed the global community of the coalition's progress in retaking Mosul.
The fighting forces are currently pushing forward towards the town more quickly than we'd thought, and more quickly certainly than we had established in our plan of campaign.
Although the fight to reclaim the city appears to favor Western-backed forces, after the battle is complete, Iraq will likely be forced to deal with a severe humanitarian crisis in wreckage of Mosul. Reporting for the Global Current, this is Gillian Lope.
Up next, Rishi Shah reports on the death of the world's longest-reigning head of state, King Bhumibol of Thailand.
King Bhumibol Adulyadej passed away October 13, 2016, after 70 years of rule. He will be replaced by his only son, Maha Vajiralongkorn. Although a long period of mourning precedes the succession, there are rumors circulating that Maha does not desire the throne. Al Jazeera summarized Bhumibol's life. He was born December 5, 1927 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. His father graduated Harvard and moved the family to Thailand, dying a year later of kidney failure. Bhumibol was educated in Switzerland and gained a passion for photography and playing the saxophone. His brother, King Ananda, died of a gunshot wound under very suspicious circumstances, and Bhumibol took his place. Throughout his reign, many governmental functions changed, and military coups transpired as the country transitioned from monarchy to constitutional monarchy. Despite the unrest, Bhumibol still kept his throne. His health began to decline in 2006 until he was hospitalized for a fever shortly before his death. King Bhumibol was the longest-serving head of state and longest-serving Thai monarch. According to BBC, there are massive processions with streets lined with citizens and military personnel, all paying respect to the late king. According to the New York Times, many public events have been canceled and most people are wearing black. Large crowds continue to gather each day outside the Grand Palace to pay their respects. Social media is exploding with people accused of defaming the monarchy. Many videos of people getting beat are making the rounds on the internet, but the majority of the streets seem to be somber. Although King Bhumibol was generally viewed positively, Thailand has laws which prohibit any criticism of the royal family. In an interview with Al Jazeera, Sulak Sivarska commented on the punishments for defaming the king.
Anybody criticizing the king could be charged for lèse majesté, putting in prison from 3 years to 15 years. So that is very difficult.
The Daily Mail reported that Facebook had its first nationwide blackout to shut down advertisements and mourn the death of their beloved king. Facebook joins the wide list of websites blacking out their homepages. Bhumibol's son does not garner the same respect from the people of Thailand, and this may lead to the monarchy losing its prestige. As Thailand recovers from the death of its leader, the parliamentary government maintains order and works to transition power to the royal heir. From the Global Current, this is Rishi Shah.
Next this morning, Yilin Du reports on the green-on-blue attack near Kabul, Afghanistan, which has claimed the lives of 2 American servicemen.
A man in Afghan uniform opened fire on a group of Americans at military depot near Kabul on Wednesday, October 19, 2016. The attack killed 2 Americans and injured another 3. The New York Times reports that the United States military in Afghanistan sent out a statement saying that of the 2 casualties, one was a service member and the other a civilian. The statement also reports the conditions of those who survived the attack. 1 United States service member and 2 United States civilians also sustained wounds and are currently stable. According to the Chicago Tribune, NATO reported that the attacker was killed afterward. The report says the victims were training and advising Afghan security forces. According to the U.S. News, commander of the United States force in Afghanistan said, "Anytime we lose a member of our team, it is deeply painful. Our sympathies go out to the families, loved ones, and the unit of those involved in this incident." The New York Times report that this attack is considered one of the green-on-blue attacks. The International Business Times states a green-on-blue attack is when an Afghan policeman or soldier fires on coalition forces in Afghanistan. The attack on Wednesday is the 3rd green-on-blue attack of the year. With this incident, the American-led international force in Afghanistan has sustained 10 deaths so far this year, while Afghan police and army forces suffered about 4,500 deaths and 8,000 wounded in this year alone. A coalition leader, Brigadier General Gunter Katz, commented on the issue of green-on-blue attacks in an interview recorded by Al Jazeera.
The main cause for those incidents were personal grievances. Knowing this, we have still confidence in our Afghan partners, and our troops out there still are willing to work with them. They have the trust that we all are working together for the same objective.
The Chicago Tribune reports that spokesman for Afghan Defense Ministry, Dalat Waziri, said the ministry had launched an investigation on the incident. This is Yilin Du for the Global Current.
Next up, Eric Christatelli brings us a piece on a death of an Indian girl after fasting for more than 2 months.
On October 4th, Aradhana Samdariya went into cardiac arrest after completing a life-threatening fast for 68 days. She died at the age of 13. She was a devoted follower of Jainism, an ancient religion that celebrates radical acts of renunciation. Samdariya's father stated that he and his wife tried to persuade their daughter to end her fast, but she persisted and would not listen to her parents' pleas. It is, however, evident that this fast can be publicized. After completing the fast, Samdariya was dressed in bridal attire and strolled around on a chariot before a crowd of 600 people. According to the first post, her family was eager to celebrate the fast with a gala event called the Parna. She was paraded around and several important figures were also present for the event. After the Parna, Samdariya broke the fast. With water, only began sweating. The death of Samdariya brings into question whether these religious traditions should continue. In an interview with National Geographic, a devout Jain man explains the ritual which claimed Samdariya's life.
According to Jain religion, if anyone has taken this kind of initiation, we all like to participate in that ritual, even if it's not our mother. We feel that this is the greatest blessing we can receive in our lives.
Samdariya's death falls into delicate legal territory for India, whose constitution allows religious freedom even for extreme ones and protects individual rights. Last year, there was a challenge to the most extreme form of fasting, Santhara, a fast to the death. The The case reached the Indian Supreme Court, who, feeling sympathetic towards the religion, suspended the state ban on this practice. Police are under pressure from child welfare advocates who called for the arrest of the parents and the religious leaders of Samdaria. The police have opened an investigation, moving at a slow pace, only interviewing the parents 2 times and making no arrests. The advocates are furious with the death of Samdaria and organized a march to push for the arrest of Samdaria's parents on the charges of murder. Achyuta Rao, the head of the non-government child's rights group, received an anonymous tip about the death and immediately filed a criminal complaint stating, "We say this is a daylight murder. As for the rituals and for the prosperity of the business, her parents egged her on to do this." Samdaria's parents are jewelers from Hyderabad. Activists such as Rao have denounced the funeral procession that hundreds of people attended to honor the death of a child. Gifts are bestowed upon the family and the faster for their sacrifice. Religious leaders respond to the accusations of coercing Samdaria to complete the fast. Ashok Sanklekcha, president of Jain Seva Sangh, an organization that oversees Jains in Hyderabad, said that Samdaria visited her spiritual guru to show that she was physically able to continue the Santhara. However, even members of Jainism have also raised their voices against the Santhara. Lata Jain said, "The problem is with the manner in which youngers who fast are lauded at the community meetings by religious elders. If not a murder, this is a suicide." In an interview by India Today, a child's rights activist demanded that the police respond to Samdaria's death as a murder.
We demand the arrest of the responsible persons, whoever it may be, either at the religion heads or at the gurus or at the own family members, mother or father, who is made to sit the child for fasting of 68 days. That is a cruel and brutal murder. In this effect, we have given even a complaint to the police commissioner to inquire into that and file the book a case against them.
This begs the question, why should a religion stop its traditions even though other religious groups like Muslims and Christians also perform fast? Why have activists pushed for changes to this tradition if other religions partake in similar fasts? It is important for the world community to keep an open mind towards the practices of the religious communities around the world. Avoiding judgment is critical because criticizing the religions of the world is against our own beliefs on religious freedom. Using legal venues as a tool to challenge these religious practices would go against the beliefs of everyone who lives in a country with religious freedom. The death of Aradhana Samdaria has changed the outlook towards these types of practices. The unnecessary period in which Samdaria fasts is seen to many as a cruel punishment. Although the Santhara is a life-threatening fast, we must not allow ourselves to judge other religions. This is Eric Crisatelli for The Global Current.
And now, Daniel Kim analyzes the long-running humanitarian crises which have persisted in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
Currently, the world seems to focus on the atrocities that are committed in battlefield Syria. Popular media outlets such as CNN cover the daily horrors that occur, such as a video of a young Syrian boy in a bombing aftermath. However, there is another crisis happening elsewhere in the world that these same media brands seem to avoid. The continuing war zone of the Democratic Republic of Congo, often referred to as the DRC. In recent history, the African nation saw brutal and bloody chapters in 1994 when the Rwandan refugees fleeing from the Rwandan genocide sought safety in the eastern section of DRC. When the Tutsis established their own government after the violence ended, Hutu refugees also flooded the eastern DRC. With countless numbers of people fleeing from their own homes, the country of Congo lost another opportunity for peace when a massive civil war broke in June 1997. This internal conflict ended in 1999 with outside intervention by Angolan military, but this was not the last time the African nation would face terror. After the Civil War, many militia groups were formed in eastern DRC, and these different factions are still conducting their own wars to this day. According to some independent media outlets, the death toll from continued violence in DRC nears that of innocent Jews Hitler slaughtered in 1930. There was even a linked report that suggests Rwanda committed genocide in Congo. If the crisis in DRC is more severe than that of today's event in Syria, then one should be baffled that news outlets do not cover the horror of the crisis in Congo. The next logical question would be why the news outlet continued to remain silent on the crisis in the Congo. In the DRC, there exists vast amounts of natural resources that are vital to many popular items and goods such as laptops and iPhones. Many wealthy countries rely on these raw materials to power electronics that are always in demand. If Congo has a vast number of resources to supply many affluent nations, then is it not important to expose the atrocities to the rest of the world? However, popular news outlets such as CNN and Fox do not cover this issue as much as they would cover the current conflict in Syria or Crimea in 2014. One possible reason is that the only international incidents that powerful countries such as the United States and other Western allies care about are the ones that directly affect their security or their interests. For example, the American news outlets devoted extreme amounts of coverage to everything related to the Iraqi war after the infamous 9/11 attacks. In this instance, many American news outlets intensely focus on the Iraq war because Americans' interests were at risk. The American public craved as much information as possible, considering their sons, daughters, friends, and loved ones were in harm's way. However, in 1990s, the Rwandan genocide occurred, with events that are equally horrific as those occurring in both Syrian and DRC today, and the international media had notably lacking coverage on this event. People were slaughtered by the hundreds, and yet the international media did not give much needed attention to this dire situation. Later on, there were numerous studies examining the reasons for lack of media coverage on the Rwandan massacre. This research yielded results such as the fact that international political situation at the time diverted focus elsewhere, or that there was nothing to gain in terms of interest and materials from an armed intervention. If America had intervened, there would have been no reward for quelling the slaughter because Rwanda is not rich in oil or any other natural resources that could be used to grow the American economy. Ironically, with the current situation in DRC, United States has opportunities for gains for intervening in the conflict. As mentioned before, DRC has vast resources that supply many electronics. Yet the American public is more concerned with Syria. This is most likely due to the fact that America is currently engaged with its enemy from Cold War, Russia, and that America could potentially become an active participant in yet another Middle Eastern conflict. There is no single definitive reason why DRC is not receiving much attention on international arena, but turning a blind eye will not bring an end to the conflict anytime soon. This is Daniel Kim reporting for the Global Currents.
Finally this morning, Daniel Kim sits down with Seton Hall University's Professor Assefaw Bariagaber on the conflict currently going on in the Democratic Republic of the Congo.
Hello, Professor. Thank you for your time today. As a director of post-conflict state reconstruction and stability program, how many post-conflict countries would you say are in the process of rebuilding themselves to this day?
Well, there are a lot of them. Mostly in the developing world, including, for instance, in Latin America, Nicaragua, and so on. In Asia, you have Afghanistan, you have perhaps Iraq itself, and other places. And in Africa, you have also many of them, like, for instance, you could say Somalia is an example. In West Africa, you have Sierra Leone, Liberia, and others. So there are quite a number of countries in their post-conflict reconstruction stage at this time.
Okay. So the next question is, what would you say about certain countries, such as Democratic Republic of Congo? It's like, what's the status over there?
Well, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, formerly known as Zaire, is in its reconstruction stage after having passed through conflict starting from, I think, 1997, essentially up to now. It's one of the conflicts that resulted in the death of millions, up to 5 million, it's estimated, and the destruction of billions of infrastructure. And it has never been stable since it became independent in 1960. It's one of the most troubled countries in Africa, actually. So it has been experiencing relative peace for some time, but not peace at all, because there is the largest UN peacekeeping force still in the DRC.
Okay.
Now, fresh conflict seems to be arising because the Electoral Commission of that country, which was supposed to organize elections, said that it's unable to do so. And so they are trying to postpone elections. And the opposition is saying no, elections cannot be postponed because the constitution requires the president steps down at the end of this year. So there is a big problem now, and things are at a standstill, and there is a fear that there would be massive conflict in what is essentially unstable country since it became independent some 55 years ago.
Okay, so do you think, in your personal opinion, that it's the issue in DRC right now is gaining as much attention as it deserves, like compared to that of the issue in Syria right now?
Not at all. It's actually incomparable in many ways. One, the conflict in Syria is a full-fledged conflict, and the conflict in Syria has generated millions of refugees, which have affected many countries in Europe. So I don't think it's fair to compare the two. But the problem in the Congo, if it gets out of hand, is going to be really problematic for many reasons. One, the Congo is one of the largest countries in Africa. The population is large, about 80, 90 million. So it's one of the largest countries. And it's one of the richest countries. But it has so many ethnic groups, so many political parties, and they have been unable to maintain a semblance of peace in that country. Indeed, in the conflict that started in 1997, there were many countries that intervened in the Congo. You know why they intervened? They intervened because there are massive mineral resources which each country in the world actually wants. And so many African countries actually intervened. For the first time in history, people refer to this Africa's First World War in terms of the number of countries that intervened in the Congo. So this is a very rich country, and its instability would destabilize the entire Central Africa because it borders so many countries. So now we cannot compare Syria and Congo at this time, but the potential impact of a renewed conflict in Congo is a grave concern, to me at least.
All right. So if there's such a huge problem in DRC right now, why do you think that not many major news outlet is reporting anything about this?
Remember, Congo is perhaps a French-speaking country, so I would imagine newspapers in French in France maybe taking a little bit more of that. Certainly the BBC has written many pieces on the Congo conflict, but I think the international community is perhaps also occupied with so many problems in different parts of the world, one of which is Syria itself, the other is Iraq, Afghanistan, and some other places. And traditionally Africa has not had this, has not attracted much attention in the United States. So there are a combination of reasons. But I'm sure the United Nations is a little bit worried because it has a force there. Its force has moved to, some of its force, it has moved to the capital city to at least help maintain peace and order, or 300 of them, by the way. But we are talking about a capital city, Kinshasa, whose population is 11 million. And I don't know what 300 of them can do, but it may have immediate impact on the UN peacekeeping forces there. And the more impact it has on them, the international community will wake up and do something, because it will affect the United Nations peacekeeping force there.
All right. So let's just talk hypothetical. So how worse off would the rest of the world be if the situation in Congo got worse in the future?
Remember, Congo is a big country in Central Africa that probably borders about 9 or 10 countries. And any instability that is bound to affect the entire region, which has been unstable for a long time. So the regional implication is very high. At the international level, we know that Congo has mineral resources which other countries don't have. There are components of minerals in your cell phone and in your laptop that actually came from Congo, and that cannot be found anywhere else, by the way. I don't think there will be a disruption of the things, because many multinational companies and groups and so on could find ways to extract those minerals. This is what happened, by the way, when there was a civil war in the Congo from 1997 and so on. But the implications of unstable Congo is really grave, I think, because we are not talking about a small country and things like that. This is a large country with enormous mineral resources, whereby countries from Africa, many of them have been attracted and entered into this war, calling the war at that time Africa's First World War. There could be Africa's Second World War if this is not resolved, because many countries could even intervene in that Congo. So it's really important country.
All right. So that's all the time we have for today. Once again, thank you once again for your time.
Thank you, Kim.
And this is Darren Kim signing off from Global Currents.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of The Global Current. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and on YouTube. I am Zanele Njab.
And I'm Tila Wittig.
Same time, same place next week.
The Global Current is brought to you by the School of Diplomacy and International Relations at Seton Hall University. Our executive producer is Liam Scollins. Our associate producer is Morgan Mount. Our news editor is John Trudeau. Our analysis editor is Marissa Hutton. Our interview segment is produced by Emily Lividay. And our technical producer is Trevor West. The Global Current theme song is Acid Jazz by Kevin MacLeod. You've been listening to The Global Current on WSOU 89.5 FM, Seton Hall's Pirate Radio.